Good day, everyone. I wanted to pick up with where I left off on the last video. So in the last video that I uploaded was DC and how to append multiple years of crime data together. I sat down, still had it open, and then in the video I talked about how you could use the 100 block to identify almost your law of crime concentration, but really you can use it to look at the volume of crime at each street block itself. DC codes this in a way that anonymizes the true specific address, but we at least have some spatial reference of where it's occurring, and it provides the lat long or XY, depending on what column you want to use, to the centroid of that block, so the center point of that block or street segment. So with that, we have the data in front of us to look at this. So I wanted to make a video on truly making a pivot table, looking at a couple filters and how to select this out. And then the cool part in Excel that really got me excited from a teaching perspective was the ability to map some of this data without hopping into Esri or syntax in another program to get more comfortable in it. So with that, I'm already in that append table where I ended that last video. So I have all the crime data from 2017 through 2023. I made a column for year and day of the week as a text. So that's truly the same file. You can see it over here where I left off in that last video. So I'm just going to highlight the data within this table. So select cell A1, hold down, Control Shift, down arrow, right arrow. And I do this out of habit to highlight the data within it. Come up to pivot table. I'm going to insert a new pivot table. It's going to load into a new sheet. So now I'm interested in knowing what blocks have the most crime. So I'm going to grab the block, make that a row. So now all of these are going to be listed. Keep in mind, these are not all blocks in DC. These are a subset that have crime occurring on them. So keep in mind, you're already looking at a subset itself. So if we look at it, and it starts on row 4, we have just under 13,000 street segments that do have crime on it. I would have to go back and check how many street segments are in DC to get an idea of how many are on it in terms of a ratio of have crime versus do not. But we have a starting point. With that, we can come back over here and we're interested in a count of how many crimes by street block. So with that, we have a case number that we can use as a count. Don't be shocked if you drop it in values, that is going to be a sum because it views it as numeric. Click on it, come down to values field settings, and we're just going to change that over to count. And now we have a count of case numbers by street segment. Keep in mind here, and I should say 100 block, but I'm probably going to switch back and forth just instinctively. This is crime data from 2017 through 2023 based on reported years. So with that, this crime could have occurred way before that. So that's why we made that year column in that prior video. So I'm going to come down, I'm going to grab year, use that as a filter, and I also want the offense to be 1 as well. If you want to really get into it, you can add shift and some other ones as well. Method, it's a nice subset. If you want to look at specific tracks or block group, DC does a very good job with their data and making it more usable out of the gate. I appreciate that with it. So with that, let's take a look at year first. Let's look at most recent full year 2023. So we can see that here, it does change in terms of the counts itself. And now let's focus on a couple offenses. Primarily, let's just look at theft. So let's choose our subset of theft. And now you're looking at it, it's like, well, it would be probably a bit easier if it was in largest, smallest, or essentially descending order. So if we right click on our values, come up, hit sort, and then largest to smallest, and we see our largest block here with over 200. And that's 3100 to 3299 block of 14th Street. I'm familiar with this. I did some other analysis in DC, so I know what blocks on this. A mixed retail, banking, a bit of everything in this area, and it's a larger block itself. So it's more in the downtownish area. So not shocking when you think of this and theft itself. With that though, that's great. You could use this, you could Google it, you could pull it up and look at that specific block. But Excel gives you the ability to map this data within it. This is one of the coolest features I still come back to when people or students are interested in learning spatial and they don't know Esri or they don't know, say, Python or any other R or any of those other softwares. Excel gives you the ability. So it gets your feet wet, gets you comfortable with spatial data, thinking spatially, and it's not terribly difficult. Esri does have add-ins to this, or Excel itself. I'll get into those in other videos, but Excel does give you the ability to think through some of these spatial concepts. One of those, concentration of crime. So we know crime is concentrated. So when I say that, let's just take a look at how many of these add up to. So in all these, and I could have highlighted a number of different ways, but when in doubt, let's just scroll down. Oh, went too far. So you have 6,000 different blocks. So I'm looking down here at the count. that contain about just over 20,000, just under 21,000 thefts. So we do see some concentration there already. And if you look at even the ones that have the top, so let's say 40 and above, we're looking at 3,300 already. So we are seeing concentration, and that's quite a bit. And you can drop it down to even more. You're going to see a nice law of crime concentration where a subset of streets, a smaller percentage of streets are going to account for more of the crime. That's just the concentration. And if you're paying attention to the literature and reading on it, you are starting to see comparisons of more hotspot or just high volume streets from the past being used as a predictor of future crime. And in a lot of this research, it's showing that it's actually really good compared to some of your advanced models. So with that, keep in mind, a good predictor for future crime is knowing where past crime occurred, that exposure part to it. So with that, let's get this on the map. Now I'm going to come down, drop in latitude and longitude as values. Again, it's viewing those as numeric. So in this case, though, we want to use the max value. These are going to be the same for every block, so it's adding them up. We don't want to count, but we want the max, which is always going to be the same lat and long for that. Swap those over, and you could use min there too. It's the same. But with this, I'm now going to copy this table out. I'm going to paste this into a new sheet that then we can map from. Paste this over, and now let's relabel a few things. So we have 100 block. Oops, Control Z. This is count of theft, and keep in mind it's only 2023. Then we have lat, and we have long. If you remember when I copied it, I did grab that grand total. So I want to just delete that column as a whole. Now I'm going to highlight this same way, the table itself, come over to insert. And if you are a PC person, you have this 3D option. If you are a Mac, you only have this maps one. 3D map is different for that. Open 3D map, and knowing Excel, it's going to try to map the spatial information that you have in the highlighted table. So it already matched latitude and longitude for me. You can see other options in here. So if you had city data and you wanted to do that, or country, even county, state, and all of that. When I say county though, keep in mind states have similar or the same name of counties, so you have to specify that. When I've done it before, you do see some error with trying to match county and state. And then full address, postal code, zip code. And I've had some prior videos, some older ones, and I'll get into those of custom region. So that's where you can bring in block group, census tract, or if you have school boundaries, anything you have a spatial file to that you want to map data to, Excel gives you that ability to it. So with that, close that little field list, but now I'm going to do a flat map and map labels. And I'm going to zoom in on DC, and you'll look and it's just a lot of large squares. So if I come down to layer options, I'm just going to reduce the size of those quite a bit. So now when I zoom in, and I'll pull that back up to, let's say 10%. You can see these are truly the streets, the centroids that had a theft occur on them in 2023. If I can zoom in, it's the center point, truly the centroid. Now you might wonder, well, I can't really tell which one's high, which one's low based on this, that each one just has a specific point on it, a centroid. Now the height you can change, and that's where we have that count measure. So if I come in here and turn that to our count of 2023, we now see those scale in a different manner. So as I zoom out, you can see where the high ones are and where the low ones are as well. So here's that high one that we were talking about. And if I select that and then zoom in, you can see the region that we're in. It doesn't give you as much detail in terms of what's going on in this area as a Google map, but you can see what also is around it in terms of just larger points of interest, a lot of schools here itself, but at least an idea of where to look then on the map too. With that, that's a quick way to bring that data into Excel. When I mentioned that you want to compare it to prior years in terms of a great predictor of prior crime or current crime is exposure, truly the history. If I were to exit out of this and Excel keeps this within it, so you're fine, it will always be there. If I come back to that pivot table, keep in mind, I'm going to go to the top, that I have a filter for 2023. Let's see when I change it, and I'm just going to copy and paste. Oh, let's do our top 10 over here and see what those look like when I change this to 2022 then. So I'm going to come down, choose 2022. And since you had it in largest to smallest, so descending order, it's going to update that for you. And you do see some changing of almost the hierarchy here in terms of where the highest one is. 2023 was our 14th street. In 2022, that was our fourth highest. It had 81. It did jump up quite a bit. Remember, it was a 205 in 2023. So you do see change from year to year. Our bottom one over here from the Rhode Island Avenue was the top one in 2022. So there is shifting, but you still see a lot of those being in the same top 10 to top 20, depending on how you want to look at it. Again, this is just a quick video to look at counting crime by the 100 block given DC's coding, how to take that, map it, and pull it up pretty quick. And then if you want to compare across, you can kind of just create subtables from that. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. I just wanted to follow up since it was still sitting on my computer. Until next time, take care.